The first round of US-Iran talks has concluded in Switzerland, and while mediators are calling it encouraging progress, the path to a lasting peace deal is already looking complicated. Qatari and Pakistani officials, the two countries serving as mediators, wrapped up the initial session early Monday morning local time at the Begenstock Resort, a historic mountaintop retreat overlooking Lake Lucerne. They announced on social media that the United States and Iran had agreed to several new mechanisms coming out of this first meeting, including what they're calling a deconfliction cell, essentially a dedicated channel to ensure military operations stop in Lebanon, where Israel and the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah have been locked in fighting for months. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, called it major progress, but added that the real first test is whether that Lebanon deconfliction cell actually works. And that caveat matters, because Lebanon was the central tension running through the entire day of talks. The session lasted only about 80 minutes before delegates broke for side consultations. Iranian negotiators had made clear from the start that they were insisting on a full end to the Israel-Hezbollah war as a condition for moving forward. According to Iranian state media, the talks focused almost entirely on Lebanon and did not touch the nuclear question at all, even though Vice President J.D. Vance, who led the American delegation, had said he hoped to make progress on exactly that issue. Vance described the American stance as an outstretched hand, telling reporters at the resort that if Iran's leadership is willing to give up its role as a driver of regional instability and abandon nuclear weapons ambitions, the United States is prepared to fundamentally transform the relationship between the two countries. But that tone of diplomacy was undercut almost immediately by President Trump. In a Fox News interview airing the same day, Trump warned Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who has insisted on Iran's right to enrich uranium, to watch his mouth, and said he could do whatever I want after the current 60-day ceasefire window closes. Iran's lead negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, fired back on social media, saying the United States should be careful with its statements and that Iran's armed forces were prepared to respond. The Strait of Hormuz added another layer of friction. Iran had claimed on Saturday it was closing the waterway, a vital corridor for roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply, in protest over continued fighting in Lebanon. The U.S. military pushed back, saying traffic continued to flow and that Iran does not control the strait. Energy Secretary Chris Wright said 67 ships had passed through in the previous 24 hours with U.S. military guidance, though maritime analysts noted a drop in vessel traffic and described the situation as one where hesitation is back in an already unpredictable corridor. Among other topics on the table, sanctions relief for Iran's oil industry, which the managing director of Iran's national oil company confirmed was seriously pursued in the talks. A proposed $300 billion reconstruction fund for Iran also loomed over the discussions. The nuclear program, widely considered the most consequential issue, has been deferred to later rounds of negotiation. In Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu reiterated that his country would keep forces in southern Lebanon as long as we need to protect our people, while Hezbollah's leader categorically rejected any continued Israeli occupation and vowed a response to violations. Israel's military chief described the Lebanon ceasefire as fragile and said the military must maintain readiness for a return to combat. It was, in short, a beginning, not a breakthrough. Mediators say encouraging progress has been made, but with Lebanon still burning and both sides trading threats even as diplomats shook hands in Switzerland, the next 60 days of negotiations will test whether this opening session was the start of something lasting or just a pause in a very long conflict. That's where things stand this Monday morning from the shores of Lake Lucerne. We'll keep watching.